Bliss is a modernist short story by Katherine Mansfield, first published in 1918. It was published in the English Review in August 1918 and later reprinted in Bliss and Other Stories. Kathleen Mansfield Murray, née Beauchamp, the 14th of October 1888, the 9th of January 1923, was a New Zealand writer, essayist and journalist, widely considered one of the most influential and important authors of the modernist movement. Her works are celebrated across the world, and have been published in 25 languages. Summary. The story follows a dinner party given by Bertha Young and her husband Harry. The story starts with Bertha in a blissful mood as her party approaches, as she considers the specialness and unconventionality of her mood. The maid has prepared a colorful fruit tray for the party, which Bertha will arrange. The nanny is feeding the baby, who reluctantly lets Bertha hold her. The moment of connection with her daughter brings her more bliss. After a phone call from her husband, who is running late, Bertha thinks ahead to who will attend the party that evening. A couple, Mr. and Mrs. Norman Knight, close friends to Bertha and Harry, Eddie Warren, a neurotic and sought-after writer, and Pearl, a strange, mysterious young woman that Bertha has taken a liking to after meeting at a club. As she prepares the drawing room cushions, Bertha recalls how Harry has declared that he finds Pearl dull. She is sure there is much more to her. Her feeling of bliss continues as she hugs the cushions and looks over the balcony to a most perfect blossoming pear tree in the garden, which she imagines as a symbol of her own life. She lists to herself some of the many aspects of her life she is grateful for, and finds that her outfit is even reminiscent of the tree. As the guests start to arrive, with Mr. and Mrs. Norman Knight calling each other nicknames and Eddie complaining about his taxi, she notes their outfits and appreciates how attractive the company is. As Harry arrives late, she considers the charm of her husband's eccentricities. Pearl is the last to arrive and, as Bertha takes her arm to lead her to the dining room, she feels an intense yet unspoken intimacy with her guest. With everyone present, the meal begins. Compliments are paid regarding the food as theater is discussed, and Bertha is overcome again by a sense of bliss, delighting in the company she has chosen. She thinks of the perfect pear tree in the moonlight in the garden, as she wonders how she can feel so connected to Pearl. She is somehow sure that Pearl must be feeling the same. After dinner, when Pearl asks if Bertha has a garden, she takes it as a sign of their connection and leads her to the garden window. Here, she opens the curtains to reveal the pear tree. The two women stand side by side admiring its beauty and in a seemingly perfect moment of mutual understanding and bliss, when the lights are snapped on and the moment ends. They rejoin the group for coffee, cigarettes, and more lively conversation. Bertha thinks about how her husband is being quite rude to Pearl, which upsets Bertha. She decides that she will try to find a way to explain to him what she and Pearl have shared, but also realizes that soon the party will end. She fears she will be alone with just her husband, but then, for the first time in her life, finds that she is also filled with desire for him. She wonders if this ardent feeling is what all her bliss has been leading up to. As the guests begin to leave to catch their trains and taxis, Harry goes to help Pearl with her coat in the hallway, which Bertha appreciates considering his earlier brusqueness. In the drawing room still, Bertha fetches a book for Eddie to borrow. As she turns her head to peer down the hallway, she sees Pearl and Harry in a romantic embrace, secretly arranging to see each other the next day. Not knowing they have been spotted, Pearl returns to the drawing room to say goodbye to Bertha and mentions the pear tree. As the final guests leave, Harry nonchalantly locks up behind them. Uncertain about the future, Bertha runs to her garden window and gazes upon her perfect tree, as lovely as ever. Bertha Young, the main character, age 30. Harry, Bertha's husband. Little Bertha, Little B, Bertha's baby daughter. Mary, servant. Nanny, Little B's nurse. Mr. and Mrs. Norman Knight, dinner guests. Eddie Warren, a poet. Pearl Fulton, a young, beguiling blonde woman. Even though Bertha Young is nearly 30, she still sometimes feels the urge to run instead of walk, to skip on and off the pavement, or to play games like chasing a hoop, or catching a ball, the way she used to do when she was a child. At other times she has the urge to just stand still and laugh for no reason at all. She wonders what a grown woman can do if she is still, periodically, overwhelmed by a feeling of absolute bliss, as though she has swallowed a piece of the sun and it shines inside her. Bertha thinks that civilized society is idiotic, because, if she were to act as she liked and express her feelings of joy, people would think her drunk and disorderly. She wonders why she has been given a body at all if she cannot use it any way she likes and instead must keep it locked up in a case like a rare fiddle. Bertha arrives home and asks her maid if the fruit that she has ordered has been delivered. The maid tells her that everything has arrived, and Bertha says that she will arrange the fruit herself. She goes into the dining room and throws off her coat, unable to stand the tight clasp of it any longer. Even though the room is cold, Bertha feels warmed by the feeling of bliss which is still burning inside her. She hardly dares to breathe, for fear of fanning this feeling. As she looks at herself in the mirror, she feels a sense of anticipation and thinks that she has the look of a woman who is waiting for something divine to happen. The maid brings in the fruit for Bertha to arrange. Bertha looks at the beautiful colors of the fruit, which she has chosen specifically to match the decor and the color of the carpet in the dining room. She thinks that this does seem like a rather absurd thing to do, but remembers that, at the time, when she was choosing the fruit, it seemed like a totally sensible decision. When she has finished, she looks at the fruit and sees that it does match the carpet perfectly. In her excited and joyful mood, this looks incredibly beautiful to her. She starts to laugh at the beauty of the scene, but, afraid that she is growing hysterical, she hurries out of the room and rushes upstairs to the nursery. In the nursery, Nurse is feeding Bertha's infant daughter, Little B, her supper. When the baby sees Bertha, she gets excited and the nurse becomes visibly annoyed that Bertha has come in and interrupted them. Nurse tells Bertha what she has done with the baby that day and that, when she took Little B to the park, Little B played with a dog. Bertha wants to tell Nurse that it is rather dangerous to let Little B play with a strange dog, but she is too timid. Watching Nurse feed the baby, Bertha feels like a poor little girl, watching a rich child play with a beautiful doll. She wonders why she has bothered to have a child if that child is always to be looked after by someone else. Little B smiles at Bertha and Bertha is so delighted that she can no longer contain herself and begs Nurse to finish feeding Little B herself. Nurse is irritated and does not think that this is a good idea because she thinks it will overexcite Little B. Bertha insists however, and Nurse leaves the pair alone. Bertha enjoys feeding her daughter and finds that holding and playing with Little B gives her the same feeling of bliss that she has felt all day and that she does not know what to do with. Nurse re-enters the nursery and tells Bertha that someone is on the phone for her. Bertha hands Little B back over to Nurse, who takes the baby back triumphantly. It is Bertha's husband, Harry, on the phone. He tells her that he will be late for the dinner party. Bertha wants to explain her feeling of bliss to Harry but feels that it would be ridiculous if she were suddenly to exclaim that it has been a divine day. Instead, she hangs up the phone and thinks again that civilized society is idiotic. The Youngs have people coming over for dinner. Bertha thinks about the guests she has invited, the Norman Knights, and Eddie Warren. Mr. Norman Knight is an aspiring theater director, his wife Mrs. Knight is interested in interior decoration, and Eddie Warren is a writer who has recently published some poems and whom it is currently fashionable to invite to dinner. Bertha has also invited a woman called Pearl Fulton, whom she has become friends with recently and fallen in love with, as she often does fall for beautiful women who have something strange about them.